Welcome back, SEC This Morning. ESPN College Football Twitter account. So wait a minute, they were checking out the gram. Oklahoma defensive line Isaiah Thomas shared his thoughts on a Lincoln Riley quote from his USC press conference. I guess Lincoln Riley said, "This is going to be the mecca of college football." Isaiah Thomas at one point said, he told us that last week at Oklahoma.
We're going to criticize him. You used to do that. You used the same lines on different girls when you were single, right?
Never, never.
You gotta use your
I've always been
stuff.
committed. That's he's a smart man. So joining us right now, smart man Reggie Chatman, 11 Alive. What did you think of that news, Reggie, when you saw Lincoln rolling out Pac-12, and there were some rumors that he might be the next head coach over at LSU?
Well, look, I think I'm like a lot of people in Baton Rouge where we felt like the Lincoln Riley was trying to avoid the smoke in trying to get to the SEC. You know what I mean? I think Lincoln Riley is going to be a really good coach. I think initially that was a guy that a lot of people in Baton Rouge really, really wanted to see come in town once they heard those rumors going. But, I mean, now that he's decided to go to USC, which I think is really good for, I guess, college football overall, you get Brian Kelly at LSU, I think everybody kind of wins. I'm
going to be selfish here and go from the Florida perspective. You spend a lot of time in the state of Louisiana. What are your thoughts about what he brings to Gainesville and the fact that LSU really didn't show much attention to him despite him being right under their nose?
I think, look, Billy Napier is a good coach, really good coach. I spent some time, like you said, in Baton Rouge, but I did a lot of covering over at ULL. I need to say that correctly. We cover the Raging Cajuns. It's a problem.
I was going to say.
If you say the wrong thing, yes. I've gotten in trouble before. But Billy Napier, really good coach. He's a really good guy, of course. Whenever we interview him, he's really, really nice and helps people out. And, I mean, he gives good answers because he's a smart guy, you know, at the end of the day. He's a smart football coach. He makes good decisions. He leads a program, knows how to build a program. And a lot of that, of course, coming from that SEC or that Nick Saban coaching tree that's been so successful over the years.
Also, Dabo Swinney. Remember, he coached under Dabo, coached under Nick Saban, and those guys' lifeblood is obviously recruiting. All right, a guy that's done an unbelievable recruiting job is Kirby Smart, and so has Nick Saban. There's a ton of talent. When you first start looking at this game, what stands out to you coming up on Saturday?
Just the amount of talent. I mean, just on both sides of the football. Of course, this Georgia team is special, right? Very, very special, especially defensively. I think a lot of people talk about how now in this day and age where you need to put up a whole bunch of points to try and win big games like this, and people talk about maybe Stetson Bennett can't get it done, but at the end of the day, the defense that Georgia has is very special. It's like the Joe Burrow offense in 2019. It's
right.
It's a lot like these special teams. You don't have to have a super, super special offense if you have a very, very special defense, which is exactly what this Georgia team has. So that's what that stands out for me, and I think that it's a clashing of two teams. But, of course, Alabama's a team that this Georgia team hasn't been able to beat over the last couple of years. And
are people around here nervous in Georgia?
Big time.
Because of Alabama? Is it the Alabama fear factor?
Absolutely. It's funny. On Instagram last night, there was a post, I think, on I saw an Instagram post. They're like, we're going to beat Alabama this year. And in the entire comment section, there was people saying, guys, we got to calm down. Like, I don't know why you guys are talking mess about Alabama. Have we not learned from the past? I mean, there people are nervous, and I think part of that also is because the state of Georgia. I think you think back to the Falcons losing and that 28-3 lead. I mean, when the Braves were in the World Series, look, people were worried. Even in Game 6, they had that lead. I mean, they were worried up by 7 runs. It's just how it is kind of out here. Until they can get over that hump, they feel like they can't do it. I feel like the Georgia team will be able to get it done.
Let me ask you about, in terms of the accumulation of talent, I think one of the things that's been the coolest for me watching Georgia, even into the preseason, was all the injuries and the opportunity where guys have stepped up. Your top 3 leading receivers for Georgia didn't even have a catch last year. How can you explain how those guys have seized those opportunities when they presented themselves?
I mean, a guy that you think you can talk about the most in that opportunity is Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
I mean, the tight end has been unbelievable. Fresh from Napa, California, comes to the SEC, just handles his business almost instantly. Leading the team, I mean, he has the record for most touchdowns by a Georgia tight end in program history in one single season. And it's for a good reason. He's huge. He works hard, and he's a guy that they knew was going to be special. And when the opportunities opened up for him with injuries, he took advantage of them as soon as he got in.
I'm still watching that play in my mind last week against Georgia Tech, where it seemed like it's one of those pictures where you see how did this guy score from here and the wiggle and the speed that he had. And, I mean, how big of a role does he end up playing this week? I would imagine him, McConkey. I don't know how much we're going to see George Pickens. We saw him running a couple routes. I feel like that was more of a let's get him out there and see if he's healthy. I'm not quite sure. Do you think we'll see a lot of George Pickens, or that's more of like, hey, we threw him out there just to see what he had?
I mean, I think you're trying to acclimate. It's a long period of time, but he hadn't played football, so you got to get him back out there. You got to get the rust knocked off. I want to ask you, though, let's look at this Georgia offense. We had this discussion a little earlier. How do you see them approaching the beginning of the game? Are they more aggressive, or do you think they play a little more conservative running the football early?
I think that we're going to do what they normally do in Georgia style, and it's going to establish the run in the way that they can handle their business. I think at the end of the day, this Georgia team they do what they need to do. It's funny, you watched the Georgia game back-to-back with the Alabama game last weekend, and you can just tell how different these offenses run, but it's how they run the offense that works so well for this team. They use the athletes that they have in space. Stetson Bennett does a good job getting the ball to playmakers in speed or in space and allow them to make their own plays. And I mean, you talk about that Brock Bowers catch during Georgia Tech last week. I mean, like you said, there's no way that he should have scored there. Catches that ball and just takes off untouched up the middle. My jaw dropped. And also the fans in that stadium weren't very happy as well, even though it was mostly a Georgia crowd.
We go back and look. There'll be. What do you think the split of the stadium's going to be coming up on Saturday?
I mean, I'll say this: it's going to be a lot of red in the stadium, and also the seats are red, so it's going to be hard to tell really what it looks like. Yeah. But I think it's going to be about 50-50. I think that Alabama fans travel well. Of course, they feel like they have a hold over this Georgia team, but this Georgia trip is very easy for Georgia.
It's real quick, and this is a conversation for all three of us. And I was having it with my wife last night. I was like, this hasn't been the greatest Alabama season, but it feels like this has been a fun Alabama season because a lot of times there have not been a whole lot of drama. We call them laundry games in the Burns household. That Lauren's doing laundry because he's like, I'm bored because Alabama is up so much. Has this been a more enjoyable season for Alabama?
I think the most interesting part of it is not only. I don't think it's been enjoyable for the fans because they've been nitpicking and Nick Saban's been outspoken about that. But I like the approach, the kinder, gentler Nick Saban, the way that he's encouraged his team. Hey, let's just go have fun. Sounds very different. Like when you approach this game, and the pressure seems squarely on Georgia with the expectation level, and not much there for Alabama. How different do you think that makes the dynamic of this game?
Well, it's funny. You talk about how this team, I guess, it's so much pressure on them. It's funny, when I was at the press conference on Monday, it seems like Kirby's a little bit looser than he normally has been in games like this in the past. There's a guy that was right next to me at the press conference whose entire camera fell over, and Kirby decided to make a joke about, hey, that pressure's getting to you, huh? I mean, look, Kirby's ready. I mean, I think it's because he has so much confidence in the team that he's had. This team, of course, is coming in favored to win this game, and it's the first time they've been able to be a favorite to win a game over Alabama in quite a long time. The defense is good. They feel good about themselves.
And going back to media days, I mean, I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had when we were in Birmingham for it. I'm like, I have never seen Kirby Smart more relaxed, like behind the scenes, because it feels like, and we've known that about Mark Stoops. Some years you come into media days, it's not necessarily what they say in the podium, but behind the scenes of how they're acting. We knew that Stoops is when they're going to have a good team is because of how he acts. I feel like that's the way about Kirby, and I feel like maybe those demons of 2017, 2018, they're gone. He understands that, and he wants to make them quit. They see that. You spent a lot of time covering LSU football. Brian Kelly kind of came out of left field. What's your reaction to that and what he can build at that program?
Well, I think that Scott Woodward did what he was asked to do. We talked about Billy Napier and, of course, the guy that was right in the backyard, that when he got hired at Florida, people like myself, people that are in Baton Rouge, are worried that, look, if he goes over to Florida, who we're going to play and are rivals with, I mean, if they come over here and start beating LSU all the time, it's going to be a problem, especially after they didn't get Lincoln Riley. But Brian Kelly comes in. I mean, you guys talked about it a little earlier. The dude's trying to acclimate himself into the system. I mean, they kind of
What'd you make of the accent?
Look, it wasn't great. And especially when you look at it side by side. But it's funny, if you don't recognize it at the time, that code switch, and you're like, oh, yeah, this is it. This is the guy. So, I mean, I think Brian Kelly's going to be really good. Really, really good.
Because where are you originally from? You're from
California,
okay,
yeah.
So how long did it take you to get to the Cajun dialect and to understand? Did you ever go full bore all into it or no?
Well, look, I use the word y'all way too often now. I mean, it kind of gets in your system pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Because it's easy. I mean,
it's a great contraction. Come on,
exactly. It makes things way easier. But, yeah, I mean, it doesn't take that long. I mean, but I don't think it would have taken me 2 days like it did with Brian Kelly. He kind of expedited the process a little bit more.
So let me ask you about acclimating, though. Culture seems like such a big, important part of college football hires, particularly in this conference, the way that Sam Pittman matches the culture there in Fayetteville, what Shane Beamer kind of fits in Columbia. What's the fit like in terms of this guy that's a little bit more of a northerner coming down into the state?
Bringing his family down?
But also, I know relationships with high school coaches are so important in the state of Louisiana. How long do you think it's going to take him to really become a fit in that state? Or is it just, hey, I'm the LSU head coach, you get that kind of de facto?
I kind of think it's the de facto thing. At the end of the day, there's nobody that's going to fit better with the LSU brand than Ed Orgeron. I mean, he was as perfect for it as it could be, and you see how that worked out, right? So at the end of the day, if you can recruit, you can recruit. Brian Kelly was pulling kids all the way out to Notre Dame, where it's cold. The campus is very pretty, but it's a cold weather atmosphere. And I think for people like me, I'm 25 years old, and at the moment where I've never seen Notre Dame be in a position where I was like, that is like the premier program in college football where they had more of an advantage. Everybody's on TV now. Of course, the SEC Network, we get to see Alabama, we get to see LSU at these schools every single weekend. So I think he's going to fit perfectly. And culture is important, but winning is the culture, and winning solves all problems.
It is interesting because, I mean, and I don't know, and outside of our footprint, we're way too close to it right now. Dabo is one of those upper echelon coaches, right? Even Lincoln Riley. But is Brian Kelly towards Louisiana high school coaches, the guys, is he looked at as that same, oh my gosh, this is Brian Kelly coming into my office? I don't know. And I think it's going to be important for Brian Kelly to have some of those guys, whether it be Kevin Falk or Corey Raymond, LSU coaches on that staff. I mean, it was reported he was trying to bring over Marcus Freeman, who just was named the head coach over at Notre Dame today. Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator, is one of the guys who wanted to bring along as well. Rees is electing to stay at Notre Dame as of this morning. You're coming in and you basically did what Nick Saban did at Michigan State. Hey, who's coming with me? Nobody decided to come. Are you worried about that?
I'm not necessarily worried about that. I mean, I'm sure he's got a tremendous network of coaches. But in terms of styles of offense and defense, I thought Durante Jones has done a really good job in the second half of the season. I don't know if that's taking the handcuffs off of him and letting him be more aggressive, or he just acclimated to being a play caller. Is he a guy you think you could see on the staff staying around with Brian Kelly?
I think so. I mean, I think he's really done a good job of the back half of the season. Of course, like you said, he never had been in this position before, so it took some growing pains. It took some time to figure it out, and I think that, especially coming after last season, the way Bo Pelini was handling things, any kind of improvement was better. And, of course, by that back half of the season, this team was flying around really well. A lot of players that were on the field that at the beginning of the year have not played in a long time because everybody's injured, but guys have stepped up. Damone Clark has been unbelievable for that linebacking core this year, and I got to credit the defensive coordinator for that, man. I mean, he's been unbelievable.
Eli Ricks was banged up. Stingley ended up being out. A bunch of those guys out. All right, so we do a thing called Wheel of Pressers on our show each and every week, and it's by far the. I mean, we do a lot of horrible things on the show. It's by far the worst. Yeah, but we continue to bring it back. So I'm going to have you play the role of. You want him to do Nick, or you want him to do Kirby? Which one?
I think it's more fun to have him do Nick.
All right, post-game press conference. Reggie Chatman, you, my friends, are in Nick Saban. What's he saying to the media? Coach, how did it go?
See, I'm trying to get the accent right. I got to get the Coke.
Be careful about the accent.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to trend anymore.
Exactly. No, I mean, look, guys, I think that we just didn't execute very well. I think that if we could have just handled our business a little bit more, I think we played well. We're not elite. I mean, people say that we're not elite, and, our guys, I thought we played really well out here. I'm not going to say that this Georgia team, of course, is fantastic, and I think that if they continue to play well, they're going to win the national championship game this year. But I think our team is good. We're not great, but we need to be better.
Why'd you do that? Now, he upstaged us. He did it way better than you and
I give him an 8 out of 10.
Okay, I'll take it. That's a passing B.
You're young.
Please.
Here's what you need to do.
Okay.
You got to throw in a couple ites in there, right? And you did this with your hands? No, it's more of a forward progress. Okay. So it's about this, and you got to use the word process. You're going to get there, but you got that.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take some notes. I'll be back.
He's great. 11 Alive, Reggie Chatman, always coming great insight, and by far the best person dressed here. Actually, this week so far.
He always comes on our show looking good.
He crushes it. Wheel of Pressers coming up. Your tweets as well. Commissioner Greg Sankey. Going to have Chris Young, music star, with us as well. A lot more coming up here on SEC this morning.